Alright, to talk about our next straight-to-video sequel, first we gotta go back to the House on Haunted Hill remake from 1999, which I did talk about, like, in the first year we were doing this whole channel back in, like, 2013. And it is a pretty big mess of a movie, but it's still one that I come back to usually around this season, or at least, like, every other year or something. And it's got a really great cast. Chris Kattan, I think, is the standout. I love that character so much and his performance in it. And Jeffrey Rush kind of doing his Vincent Price sort of thing. And that fun opening sequence with the roller coaster. It does get sort of all over the place, and it's very much that late 90s, early 2000s sort of, jolty horror kind of thing that was going on. And I almost feel like this was kind of a start to that, where it was like a couple years before 13 Ghosts, and then those kind of went in that direction for a little bit for the early 2000s, and it's very much a sort of relic of that. But there's just enough fun in it that I often come back to it, so I do have some affection for this movie, even if it has a lot of problems. Also, the presence of Jeffrey Combs, who I just praised endlessly in the video right before this, the Reanimator video, who is the only returning cast member for the movie we're getting ready to talk about now, which is Return to House on Haunted Hill, which is basically... there's obviously going to be worse movies and worse straight-to-video sequels out there, but this does feel like it pretty much epitomizes just the lameness that so many of these regions, that just forgettable place. Like, this was clearly just some sort of cashing in on what? I'm not really sure, because it's 8 years after the original movie. But, and just everything about it is generic and kind of lazy, and it's to the point that you probably wonder, like, okay, how much did they have, like, how many ideas did they have that they felt the need to make this 8 years later? And when you think about it that way, you look at the fact that this movie is 79 minutes long. This is the unrated version, so it has a couple of extra minutes. So this one's like 81 minutes. But the original movie itself was 79 minutes. And just right away, before it's even a horror movie, you can just see all those generic qualities in it, like the generic score that's playing, and we've got our main character who's walking through her workplace with an assistant that's trying to fill her in on everything really quickly while she's barking deadlines at people. It's like the beginning of some really generic romantic comedy or something. And honestly, because it's, a horror movie and a straight-to-video horror movie at that, we gotta get that teen demographic. We're gonna go ahead and throw random tits into this introduction as well. So that's just everything about these first few minutes just shows the laziness at work already. But you want to talk about not returning out. There were 2 survivors in the first movie, which were Ali Larter and Taye Diggs. The Taye Diggs character, I guess, just ran off with his money and disappeared because he's never brought up. Ali Larter, believe it or not, did not feel the need to come back for this movie. So I don't know if it was... I'm assuming, because I'm pretty sure she was approached, I'm going to assume that originally meant it had to have been that it was Ali Larter's character that would have been the lead in this one, because there's no way they would have brought Ali Larter back just to do what they do to that character in this, where the focus is her sister because she is killed off-screen by an art dealer who's looking for an artifact inside the house. I guess he thought this character would know where it was or something. I don't know. It's a very, very thin plot just to get us back into the house, but the only actual appearance of the character of Sarah is this one quick vision that the sister has of her. And it could have been an effective scene. Like, this moment kind of goes back and forth from, oh, that almost worked, to, oh, that's really lame. Where she's just walking around the room that she supposedly... He sets it up like it was, like she killed herself. But the twist comes, like, 2 minutes later that she didn't. So, but they're walking around the room that she died in, and then she just kind of suddenly sees, like, Sarah sitting there, and it's like, oh my god, Sarah. But she's got, like, Japanese horror hair over her face, and then she, like, sits up and she's got, like, a giant hole in her head because she allegedly shot herself. And there's a moment here, but every time it's like, oh, that was almost effective. We get moments like the hair thing, or the voice, that this warning voice that comes out of her, that's very laughable. So that's the only time we actually see the character. So something tells me it was originally just supposed to be the character of Sarah was the main character, but then they had to slightly alter it to, oh, it's her sister now, or something. I don't know. But yeah, talking about this artifact that this dealer is looking for, it's, you want to talk more lazy writing, it's just a MacGuffin to get them in the house, like I was saying. And the more it progresses as to what this artifact is, just the lamer the story gets, and the more it tries to sort of undermine the moments that might have genuinely been creepy in the first movie. So let's talk about this other antagonist, though. This art dealer that is Eric Palladino, who is our bad guy, and we know he's the bad guy because the first time we see him, he's indoors, but he's wearing sunglasses, and then he dramatically whips these sunglasses off, and then he does a lot of chuckling while stroking his chin as he's talking about how he killed the sister, which he just kind of immediately admits to. And then it kind of seems like his mannerisms are, he's supposed to be like when John Travolta played bad guy, specifically in like the John Woo movies like Face Off and Broken Arrow. It feels very much like that's what he modeled this performance after. And I don't mind Eric Palladino as an actor. I recommend Finder's Fee as often as I can. But he's not John Travolta. So he can't quite do the lip rubbing thing that he's doing to the effect that I think is desired. But yeah, so there's also this professor character that's in the mix here, and everybody's after this artifact that's in the house. And there's this rivalry that's set up where the dealer was the former student of this professor, and they have this thing going on, and you just don't give a shit. It just doesn't matter at all. Like, none of these characters are engaging in any way whatsoever, and you're basically just waiting for, you're praying, Jeffrey Combs, please enter this movie and just wipe these people out, because I don't care. There's also a lot of attempts at comedy that aren't working, so it's like, just take them all out. Just make this quick. I know you're only working with an hour and 20 minutes here. That includes a post-credit scene and surprisingly lengthy credits for a movie that feels so small. But yeah, it just doesn't matter. It's a movie that really, I know you can say this about most things, but I mean, when you talk about a movie that just really didn't need to happen, and it's clear in the setup where it's like they didn't really have anything to say, oh, I've got this great idea where we can expand on the House on Haunted Hill thing from 8 years ago. So what we're really waiting for is when it gets to the ghosts coming out and the gruesome factor and stuff like that. And there's a pretty decent first kill where the guy's pulled through the hole in the wall. Is pretty well done. And there's the moment when, like, there's the guy that's, like, pulled apart. There's the guy who gets, like, his brain taken out. It's like, this is where you can tell, this is where all the effort went, clearly. So it's like, okay, this part is alright. This might be the stuff that genre fans are like, okay, I can work with this. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm watching something totally pointless if you put some effort into this, at least. But then it gets to this place where the ghosts, there's like one particular scene where the ghosts are like sexual now. And once again, teen demographic, but also there's a clear moment that's like this, The Shining, Mrs. Massey ripoff scene, moment, reveal, whatever you want to call it. And that feels a little desperate. By the way, I am in no means anti-nudity in movies. I just feel like in movies like this, it feels particularly lazy and obvious in regards to targeting a certain demographic and hoping you can draw them in the cheapest way possible. That's my concern with that. So, yeah, I was talking about undermining some of the scary factor of the original movie, which didn't have a lot. Like, there was the one moment in the first movie that's still very chilling when Bridget Wilson has the camera and she sort of walks in on Vanica performing surgery with nurses there on this patient, and she can only see them through the camera, and then they like all turn and look at her in unison. You're not going to find anything even close to that kind of level of creepy in this. Like, those kill scenes are the most we get. Like, every now and then, there's, like, this ghost nurse with a Jacob's Ladder head just kind of lurking around that doesn't really do anything. She's all over it, too. She's on the disc. Like, they tried to really use her, but there's no... It's pointless anyway, because you have the legendary Jeffrey Combs, who was willing to come back for this and play Vanica again, and so using him and using no dialogue is something that is an interesting choice. Like normally I might say, like, oh, you have this amazing actor and you don't even give him dialogue, you just have him stand there, but he's one of those actors where he can have an intensity just in his expression. It is very interesting to give him a job where that's all he can use is just his intense expressions and just evoke evil with that. And it's something he's very capable of, if it weren't for the fact that we barely see him at all. And not in that effective Shark and Jaws kind of way of not showing him barely at all. Just a waste. Just a waste of his talent, and a waste of bringing him to the set. Like, he gets, a couple of scenes here and there, but it's just sort of... And I guess that's always what Vanica was when you look at the first movie, but still... I mean, if you're gonna come back and you want to expand a little bit, you could use him a little more, and you can keep up the him not having dialogue thing and just him using expression. You could have definitely done a lot with that. I'm sure he would have been more than willing. I'm sure he would have been thrilled, because it's such his wheelhouse. But no, the thing about it is we're really, really starting to focus on this artifact thing, and what really brings everything down is the fact that it is revealed that it's not some holy evil force that's going on. I mean the first movie is very vague too about what exactly is going on here and what the evil is, which can actually be cool, if it's just vague, and I'm totally okay with that. But that they're explaining it all away by saying that this artifact is what's making the ghosts be evil for Vanica and basically be his minions, killing whoever is in the house. It's all because of this evil artifact, actually. The ghosts are actually okay. It's the artifact that's making them murderous ghosts, okay? So, but it's making them work for Vanica. So, Vanica's not... He was always evil. He's not... His evil has nothing to do with the artifact, I think. So make of that what you will. It all doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because you know what the climax of this movie is? They decide the only way to get rid of the artifact and get it out of the house is to flush it. Now, mind you, if you're going to get something out of the house, it makes sense to do that. But if you're going to make it your dramatic climax of a horror movie, it's a little underwhelming, It's like, oh, maybe there's some logic in it. It's very underwhelming and uncinematic, though. So, even the little fake effect when it comes out of the pipe is just so... It's like, really? This is what we're leading to. This is our big dramatic finish. This is what casts the evil out. Alright. There's actually a moment... It almost seems like the movie becomes self-aware, but I don't think it's that clever. Where it's... I mean, it tries this a couple of times. Because we've got our Eric Palladino character who's the villain, so he's the emotionless one whenever something happens. So we have this moment that's actually interesting for character development. The moment halfway through where our main character actually gets out of the house, and she has like a full Shawshank moment because it's raining, and you get that real sense of freedom, because we know from having, experienced the entirety of the first movie how much of a prison that house feels like when all that stuff shuts down and you're trapped in there. and this claustrophobic feeling. And so when she gets that moment of freedom midway through the movie, but then realizes that her friend has been brought inside for convoluted reasons, that she's going to have to go back. She's going to have to sacrifice that freedom she's feeling and go back in. And of course, the house is willing to let her in order to do this, which makes sense, because we know the house is sentient and lures and does the whole thing. So that whole thing I'm actually fine with. But yeah, then there's the moment where, the bad guy says, like, oh, how touching. But so yeah, it's like it's trying to be self-aware about itself, but then it gets to this moment towards the end when he shows up again and he pulls a gun on them and he says, like, going somewhere, and the main character says, we just don't have time for this. Like, we don't have time for this plot that was going on with you. Like, it's actually, we've been wasting time this whole time. So, but like I said, I don't think it's being self-aware in that regard. If it was, there would have been more signs throughout the movie that it was more clever than this, or on the level of that, and there just isn't. It's just very dull, and I keep saying lazy, but there aren't many more synonyms to go with that, and it's not giving me much else to work with, so that's all I can really say about it, I guess. The sets look good. If you want to, they do a good job recreating the sets from the first movie. We talked about when we talked about the From Dusk Till Dawn sequels, particularly in the second movie when they go back to the Titty Twister, where I said that the set looks significantly smaller, like noticeably smaller because it's a straight-to-video movie, obviously. So here they do feel it's the same thing. They feel a little smaller, but they did a better job recreating the sets. I like the fact that they actually left the glass on the floor from where the ceiling came down at the beginning of the original movie. So there's that. And like I said, Jeffrey Combs here doing, like, mostly expression acting. When he gets attacked at the end, he says, like, no. But other than that, he has no lines. He's just like a force. And like I said, that's a good idea and a good acting exercise to give him, because he can totally do it. But it still doesn't feel like there's near enough time devoted to letting him do that and letting him sort of take scenes over. It's mostly, it really wanted to go down this artifact path, and plots in general involving the villain and the professor, and the Serena Vincent character, where it's like characters are turning on each other, and it's like, and this is all really early too. This is all before the horror even kicks in, and it's like, oh my god, who the fuck cares? Yeah. And then, yes, there is a post-credit scene that's doesn't matter. It throws another pair of tits into the mix, if that's what you're into. And it's just a stupid thing. It doesn't need to be there. So that's what they find the artifact on a beach. Oh, it's the ending of Jumanji. That's all it is. So that's what this movie is. Like I said, very very lame, and just a shining example of how straight-to-video horror sequels get the reputation that they do, because they're just this. There's no effort really. So except for when we got to like some of the kills and the gore and stuff like that, then it was like somebody passionate briefly took over. But everything around it is just killing time until we can do that stuff. That's all it's here for. It doesn't serve a purpose. It's 79 minutes long. It does. They didn't have a lot of ideas. So that's what this is. So the next thing is probably going to be, it might be a Versus, it might be a Stephen King thing. We're kind of jumping all around as we're getting to this middle point of the month, but we'll see what else there is. There's going to be something. So all of that stuff and more. So until the next thing, I think that's it.